being is Dharma. So in this context, in this today theme 6 Dhamma tradition building post-COVID world order, first I will invite our Sadhu Bhadresh Dasji, Mahamahopadhyay Sadhu Bhadresh Dasji. He is the head of Bochasanwasi Akshar Purushottam Sanstha Swaminarayan Research Institute Akshardham in New Delhi. Bhadresh Das Swami is a Sanskrit scholar and ardent monk of the Bochasanwasi Akshar Purushottam Swaminarayan Sanstha. In 2007, he completed the Swaminarayan Bhasyam, a 5-volume classical Sanskrit commentary on Prasthantara, just like you have in a Buddhist tradition, Tripitak, we have a Prasthantara, which contain Bhagavad-Gita, Upanishad and Brahma Sutra. So he wrote commentary on that. This commentary on the 3 texts, Upanishad, Bhagavad-Gita and Brahma Sutra, from the interpretive foundation of the philosophy of Akshar Purushottam Darshan. So now I will, Swamiji, now this is your time.
ॐ शन्नो मित्रशं वरुणः शन्नो भवत्वर्यमा शन्न इन्द्रो बृहस्पतिः शन्नो विष्णुरुक्रमः नमो ब्रह्मणे नमस्ते वायो त्वमेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्मासि त्वामेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्म वदिष्यामि ऋतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतु तद्वक्तारमवतु अवतु माम् अवतु वक्तारम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः स्वामिनारायणः साक्षात् अक्षरपुरुषोत्तमः सर्वेभ्यः परमां शान्तिं आनंदम सुखमर्पयेत्। सर्वप्रथम छठ के पवित्र अवसर पर हमारे गुरुदेव श्री महंत स्वामी जी महाराज एवं अक्षरधाम की ओर से मैं हार्दिक बधाई देता हूँ। टुडे द सब्जेक्ट ऑफ माय स्पीच इज धर्म एंड post-COVID-19 era. The recent COVID-19 pandemic brings to mind 2 quotes. One is eminent in our Shastras and another is well known in the West. I would like to begin with the second one. The famous English writer, author Charles Dickens begins his historic masterpiece on the French Revolution with ominous yet promising words that stand unshaken in times of turmoil and change. The Tale of Two Cities, a book, The Tale of Two Cities, begins with the words, "It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief, it was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light, it was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair." And other one is from Shastra. Dharma eva hato hanti, dharmo rakshati rakshitah, tasmat dharmo nahantavyaha. An undermined dharma undermines, whereas a dharma preserved preserves. Therefore, dharma should not be undermined. Over last 2 years, we have gone through such trying times. In the wake of novel coronavirus, we have all witnessed these conflicting experiences. We saw our neighbors, friends, family members, and possibly even ourselves suffer illness, lost in despair, helpless and unable to do anything. We saw darkness. We saw people plagued by disbelief. We saw many act in foolish and selfish way. It was truly the worst of times. But at the same time, we also witnessed hope in humankind's immense ability to unify in helping others in need. We saw healthcare workers risking their lives without rest. We saw entire communities, corporations, religious organizations, government institutions, and individual people providing much needed infrastructural support by providing the necessities, food, clean water, healthcare, and other essential items during lockdowns and isolations. We even saw immense sacrifices that people made for those in need. I would like to share with you a story of such sacrifice that touched my heart. Narayan Dabhadkar. Narayan Dabhadkar was a retired statistician from Nagpur who fell sick with COVID while receiving treatment at Indira Gandhi Hospital in Maharashtra. He overheard a woman pleading to hospital staff to get her 40-year-old COVID positive husband admitted. The hospital was filled with over its capacity and had no beds to offer. Instead of blaming others or looking the other way, Narayana rose from his bed and offered it to the woman's husband. Doctors explained to Narayana that his own condition was critical and he would surely not survive if he left. Narayana knew he was signing his own death sentence. As he was leaving the hospital staff asked why he was making such an immense sacrifice and risking his own life. Narayana replied with a smile, I am 85 years old. I have lived my life, but if the woman's husband dies, then his children will be orphaned. It is my duty to save his life. He voluntarily gave up his bed at the hospital, was discharged and collected by his daughter. 3 days later, Narayana died in his home, content at having offered another a fighting chance to survive. COVID-19 showed us what it truly means to live selflessly. During the pandemic, we also together witnessed the light at the end of the tunnel, ways to move forward through mass testing initiatives and vaccination drives. India's sheer infrastructure to provide over 1 billion vaccines to its citizens and much more to other countries shone a light on the core values that have continued to endure this country, its people, and its foundational Dharma. We witnessed belief in not just one another but also in divine. We prayed for ourselves, for our family members. We prayed for our neighbors, we prayed for our country, we prayed for humankind, and we prayed for all living beings. Through what we lost in health, we gained in devotion and faith. Now, let me say something about other quote I mentioned in the beginning of my speech from Shastra. Dharma eva hato hanti, dharmo rakshati rakshitaha, tasmat dharmo na hantavyaha. When dharma is undermined, we lose everything. We lose the world in which we live, the communities in which we are settled, the families in which we grow, the people whom we care for, and we even lose ourselves. In Bharatiya Sanskriti, Dharma has many meanings to many people. हमारे भारतवर्ष में धर्म की जो विभावना है वो अणोह अणियान से लेकर महतो महियान तक जाती है. स्थूलाति स्थूल विषय को भी हमारा धर्म लेता है और सूक्ष्माति सूक्ष्म विषय को भी बताता है. As mentioned before, the Mimamsakas define dharma as an art of action. Jaimini begins in Mimamsa Sutra, Athato Dharma Jignasa. Now, therefore, we shall desire to know dharma. And then defines dharma in the very next sutra, Chodana Lakshanortho Dharma. The Vaisheshikas also define dharma as a means of Abhyudaya and Nishreyasa. Kanad begins his sutra with announcing Athato Dharmam Vyakhyāsyāmaha. Now, therefore, we shall define dharma. It then continues by defining dharma yato yataha abhyudaya nishreyasa siddhihi sadharmaha. As does the Bhagavad-Gita, it says nehabhikramanashosti pratyavayo na vidyate swalpamapyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. In Vedic times, on the convocation ceremony, acharyas, teachers, used to say their shishyas, students, Vedamanucchacharyonte vasinamanushasti satyam vada dharmam chara swadhyayan ma pramadaha satyanna pramaditavyam kushalanna pramaditavyam. Bhutyai na pramaditavyam ityadi. This shows that one should know so many things to understand dharma, and therefore we must be very careful when we interpret a term dharma, because our shastras, when they define dharma, we can see the various definitions of dharma. According to ancient Bharatiya Shastras, dharma serves as a purifier for all who live in this world, purifier of the whole universe. Within Satsanga Diksha, one of our Dharma Shastras, it is said, Shuddhihi sarva vidha palya bahya Chabhyantara sada. One should observe all forms of external and internal purity. I would like to discuss the enduring effects of dharma as it applies to 5 aspects of life. 1. Purity in the body, purity in the mind, purity in social living, purity in environment, purity in spiritual living. Dharma for purity in the body. As we all know, COVID is a virus that infects, among others, the human respiratory and circulatory systems. During the pandemic, we were repeatedly asked by national health organizations like the CDC, WHO, and the National Indian Health Board to keep ourselves and our surroundings disinfected and clean to prevent infection and its spread. Our Dharma has always emphasized the importance of such cleanliness. It often dictates that cleanliness is a stepping stone to holiness. Swachhata tya prabhuta. Spiritually, spiritual purity cannot be attained without physical and mental purity. Perfect personal hygiene clean living conditions, and a clean way of life are parts of the practice of the Dharma. For example, it is said, Satsangibi prabodhavyam suryodayat sada purvam suryodayat sada tatah snanadikam krutva dhartavyam shuddha vastrakam. One should always awaken before sunrise. Upon bathing and performing other morning routines, one should put on washed clothes. During the pandemic time, people were also educated that one of the best ways to controlling the spread of COVID was to wash our hands. Our Shastras have always taught us to do the same. In fact, in addition to washing our hands, they also instructed us to wash our feet before entering one's home or eating meals or performing sacred duties. Now let us think about food consumption. Regarding consumption, our Dharma also prescribes several rules on what to eat, what to avoid, and even how to drink water. Patavyam galitam peyam jalam dugdhadikam tatha khadyam panam ashuddham yat gruhniyad vastu tan nahi. One should consume water, milk and other drinkable substances after they have been filtered. Food items and beverages that are impure should not never be consumed. In chapter 7, the Bhagavad-Gita emphasizes the importance of consuming sattvika foods. It describes sattvika food as ayuhu, sattva, bala, arogya, sukha, priti, vivardhanaha, rasyaha, snigdhaha, sthiraha, rudhyaha, aharaha, sattvika priyaha. In contrast, the next verse describes rajasika foods. Katu, amla, lavana, ati ushna, ati tikshna, ruksha, vidahinaha, aharaha, rajasasya ishta, dukkha shokamaya pradaha. Then explaining tamasic foods, it is said, yatayamam, gatarasam, puti paryushitam chayat, uchchistamapi chamedhyam bhojanam tamasapriyam. We have to notice here that foods that are described in Gita as Rajasika and Tamasika are the same types of foods that doctors recommend avoiding to maintain good health and those to avoid during illness like COVID-19. In post-COVID-19 era, we must think about addiction-free living. Dharma practice prohibits the consumption of addictive and intoxicating substances. For example, within our Dharma scriptures, we find the verse, Sura Bhanga Tamaladi. Sura Bhanga Tamaladi Yadyad Bhavedhi Madakam Tad Bhakshayet Piben Naiva Dhumra Panam Apityajet. One should never ingest intoxicating substances such as alcohol, hemp and tobacco. One should also refrain from smoking. A recent study by the Louis Katz School of Medicine at Temple University, USA, revealed that COVID-19 patients with a history of alcohol consumption and cigarette smoking have dramatically more severe outcomes than others. In this way, Dharma serves as a purifier for our physical body. Dharma for purity of the mind. The COVID-19 pandemic has had a major effect on not just our physical health, but also on our mental health. Younger adults, minorities, essential workers, and caregivers reported having experienced worse mental health outcomes, increased substance use, and elevated suicidal ideation. The CDC reported that during the pandemic, symptoms of anxiety disorder and depressive disorder increased throughout the population. Dharma's ability to sustain includes not just physical health, but also mental health. In the Bhagavad-Gita, when Arjuna is down on his knees and distressed, Bhagavan Sri Krishna offers him Dharma as a means for overcoming his anxiety, depression and fear. He says, Neha vikramanashosti pratyavayo na vidyate swalpamapyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. We can also improve our mental health through yoga practice. Yoga practice is a part of Dharma practice in India since Vedic times. Yoga practice improves stability of one's thoughts, stability in one's decisions and convictions, and stability in one's desires and ambitions. In terms of Bhagavad Gita, this stability is Sthita Pragnata. With life, a life that is disoriented, disturbed, detrimental and destructive. What does this stability look like? Gita reveals, Dukkheshu anudvigna manaha sukheshu vigataspruhaha vita raga bhayakrodhaha sthitadhir muniruchyate. One whose mind remains unshaken amidst misery, who is without aspiration for worldly happiness, and who is devoid of mundane desire, fear and anger, is said to be a sage with stable mind. So, Dharma increases our inner strength and leads us to the state of mental stability, Sthita Pragnata. Dharma for purity of social living. Our Guru Sri Pramukh Swami Maharaj often used to say, in the joy of others lies our own, in the progress of others rests our own, in the good of others abides our own. COVID-19 made it clear that if we want to continue to survive and flourish as a species, then we must move away from thinking of just ourselves. We must begin thinking as one, as a society, as a community. It is in this sense the Dharma truly sustains society. It upholds the world through niyamaha, through rules of conduct, through vidhi and nishedh, through do's and don'ts. COVID-19 taught us the power of obeying and disobeying. One mistake shook the entire world. One mistake cost us trillions of rupees in productivity, trillions more spent in healthcare, billions of lives changed, and millions of lives lost, all because of a simple mistake, disobeying just one rule, contempt of just one vidhi or nishedh. Imagine how many lives would have been saved if Dharma was followed. Imagine how many families would have been saved if Dharma was, if Dharma was upheld. Imagine how many children would not have sleep at night without the loving comfort of their mother and father. If Dharma was maintained, and that's why it said, Tasmat Dharmo na hantavya. Dharma for environmental purity. The environmental purity is the most demanded thing for the survival of all living beings. Without environmental purity, blissful life is impossible. It's our responsibility to protect our planet. It is said in Shastras, Manushyanam, Pashunam va, Mat Kunadescha Pakshinam, 𝐃𝐡𝐚𝐽𝐧𝐟𝐞𝐫𝐞𝐧𝐜 हिंसा कार्या न करहिचित. अहिंसा, हम जानते हैं कि अहिंसा परमो धर्म इसे कहा है. अब हम आते हैं प्योरिटी थ्रू स्पिरिचुअलिटी, ये सब का आधार है. हाउ डू यू एंश्योर सच प्योरिटीज थ्रू धर्म? द आंसर लाइज इन अ ब्रीफ कन्वर्सेशन that occurred on July 30, 2001. Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, the father of our nation's advanced space and missile technology, had a conversation across the table with Sri Pramukh Swamiji Maharaj. Dr. Kalam revealed that India, upon attaining independence, is a developing country. He asked on behalf of scientists and future leaders of the country, Swamiji, what should be our next vision for India? Dr. Kalam offered 5 important areas to transform India: the development of education, healthcare, agriculture, information and communication, and infrastructure and critical technology. He then asked, how do we transform a developing country into a developed country? Then Pramukh Swamiji Maharaj answered, along with these 5, add a 6th, faith in God. Faith in God and developing people through spirituality. Thus, spirituality becomes a part of Dharma and beneficial for all of us. So friends, in conclusion, I would like to say that all of us have common goals. We want to protect our health and well-being. We want to protect our families and communities. We want to protect our environment. Also, we have deep desire of spiritual life. In answer to this, I strongly believe that our Dharma practice can provide complete satisfaction to our goals. The emblem of Supreme Court of India announces, Yato Dharmaha, Tato Jayaha, where there is a Dharma, there is victory. On this momentous day, I offer my humble prayers to Bhagwan Swaminarayan, my Gurus Pramukh Swamiji Maharaj and Mahant Swamiji Maharaj, and all the divine saints and leaders that have blessed this enduring nation with their presence and wisdom. I pray, may we together foster a new life free of addiction and filled with healthy choices, free of impurity and filled with purity. May we together build societies on a Dharma tradition that values honesty, integrity, non-violence, tolerance, universal harmony, love and respect. May we together nurture a sustainable environment that ensures a greater respect for the dignity and rights of all beings. May we together continue to walk on our path of Dharma Dhamma, a path of spirituality. With Dharma Dhamma tradition as our eternal torchbearer, I am hopeful, faithful and confident that we gathered here will come to witness, despite the winter of despair, despite the season of darkness, despite the epoch of incredulity, despite the age of foolishness, and despite the worst of times, we will come to witness a spring of hope, a season of light, an epoch of belief, an age of eternal wisdom, and the best of time. Tanotu sakale vishve paramananda mangalam Swaminarayan sakshat akshara purushottama. Om shanti, shanti, shanti.
धन्यवाद स्वामी भद्रेश जी महाराज. Our next speaker is Ram Madhoji. He is a former National General Secretary of the Bharatiya Janata Party, which is the ruling government of this country. He is a member of Board of Governors of India Foundation, one of the organizers of this conference. He is also a member of National Executive of the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. He has authored several books. Most recent one is Hindutva Paradigm, Integral Humanism and the Quest for the Non-Western Worldview. This book is available here, and I am requesting all of you to buy this book. You must read this. Ram Madhav.
No, I have not requested Swamiji to market my book. Pujya Swami Vigyananand ji, the chair of this session. Pujya Swami Bhadresh Das ji Maharaj, the revered saint from Swaminarayan order. All the distinguished scholars and eminences present in the conference today. It is a great pleasure for me to be a part of the 6th International Dharma Conference that is being held here at the Nalanda University. This year's theme is Dharma traditions in building the post-COVID world order. I see it not only as a very timely theme, but also a very crucial theme for the mankind. The reason is that a new world order is gradually taking shape today, post the dreadful pandemic that has devastated economies, populations, and the social order itself. The last time that such an eventuality had come for a new world order to be built was after the Second World War. There was an urge felt that we should build a world order based on new agenda, new principles. We could not contribute much in the building of that world order 7 decades ago. There were several reasons. One of them was that we were ourselves a newly independent nation. The world at that time was preoccupied with avoiding future wars, avoiding future dictators, and building a liberal democratic order for the mankind. If there was any contribution from our side, from the Indian side, to the world's socio-political wisdom in the last century, it was Gandhiji's Satya and Ahimsa, truth and non-violence. That world order, which was created post the Second World War, has served the humanity for more than 7 decades. It was essentially Eurocentric. It drew its ideas and inspiration from the European and Western wisdom. When I say that it was European or Western wisdom, I am not attempting to make any value judgment here. I am not at least one who would say that all that was the product of Western wisdom was false or wrong. There could be many good things which the world has experienced in last 7 decades. Institutions were built, policies were framed based on those ideas of European origin. The central agenda items for that world order had been economy, trade, and security. These agenda items have dominated the world's entire thought process in the last 7 decades. And today, 7 decades down the line, when we are face to face with this dreadful pandemic, we suddenly realize that the world order built on this competing agenda of economic, political and security items, security issues, it has suddenly started wilting precariously. as though it is collapsing. It has now been pushed into a nightmarish quagmire. Now the effort of the entire humanity is to come out of that quagmire. In the new post-COVID world, the humanity looks up for new thinking, new ideas, new world order. Friends, it is in this emerging new world order where the old agenda items like trade, commerce, defense, polity, all of them are going to take a back seat. I am not saying they will disappear, but they are going to take a back seat, and in their place will emerge the more urgent issues, more urgent agenda items like climate change, climate issues, healthcare issues, issues centered around technology, and also issues related to questions of rights and freedoms. The new world order we are going to enter will be dominated by these items that will occupy the world's high table. It is in this new world order that the religions of the East, whether we should use the word religion or dharma is a debate that should continue, but for the sake of understanding only I am using that word religion. The religions of the East, including Hinduism, Sikhism, Jainism and Buddhism and several other traditions of the East, have a prominent role to play. When I say the religions of the East, I would urge all of you to read one very interesting speech by Mahatma Gandhi on 25th March of 1947. There was an Asian Relations Conference held in Delhi. He was invited to speak in the end, last speaker. So he said, East has always contributed to the world's religious and spiritual wisdom. Saying that, he said, when I say East, I am not only talking about Rama, Krishna, Buddha and Mahavira. I am also talking about Jesus, because he also was the child of East. I am also talking about Moses. He also, by birth, was a child of East. I am also talking about, Muhammad, who also took birth in the Eastern Hemisphere. So East has always contributed its wisdom to humanity's welfare and well-being. But when I talk about the Eastern religions today, I am focusing more on those Indic traditions which had same experience, same history and same origin in their thoughts and in their evolution. We generally tend to call them as two sets of religions. One are Dharma religions like Hinduism, Sikhism, Jainism and many other Sanatani traditions, and the other happen to be various strands of Buddhism which follow the tradition of Dhamma. Now just I will briefly touch upon these four new agenda items and close. The first I mentioned as climate issues. On the climate vision, who else than we, the Indians, the Indic wise men, can contribute the most profound ideas? It is we who said that the entire creation is most reverential. Mata Prithvi, Putroham Prithivyaha, the Prithvi Sukta of Atharva Veda. The very first stanza, we attached sacredness to the entire creation, the earth and the entire animate and inanimate. In fact, in the inaugural, Chief Minister Sri Nitish Kumarji was referring to hinting at the origins of the COVID virus. He was blaming a particular country, we have all heard him. But we all agree that the origins were because of disrespect for nature and its order. What to eat, what not to eat. Every living object is not for human's consumption. There are some things that you can consume, but not everything, not the bats. So there is an aspect of reverence that is inbuilt in our tradition. If you disregard it, you will face with situations like this pandemic. And the second question of healthcare, it has undergone tremendous transformation today. The old approach of healthcare to be seen as disease management is going to be the passé now. It is no longer about viruses and vaccines. It's not about disease management. The new thinking about healthcare is going to be healthy living. How to make a human lead a healthy life. Again, in that, East has made great strides in the science of healthy living. Not disease management. None of our sciences of health, ancient Indian wisdom on health, talks about disease management. It only talks about living healthy. The very name of the science is called Ayurveda. The Veda, the science of living, longer life. See, our systems like, yoga, Ashtanga yoga, not one element of Keval exercise part of yoga, the entire Ashtanga yoga, the Ayurveda, the meditation, the Siddha, and many such Indic wisdom traditions can play an important role in addressing this challenge of new approach to health care. You already know, today if you go and sit cross-legged at the New York, Central Park in New York, close your eyes, and after 20 minutes you open your eyes, you will have 500 people standing in front of you seeking, mercy from you. Just all that you have to do is to do a Padmasana. So that is the kind of urge you find in the world. The third is, friends, we are entering the, the technology era. The era of frontier technologies. We have entered the era of artificial intelligence, robotics, big data, digital currencies. In this new era of technologies, a big ethical debate is going to begin. It has already started, but it is going to become very predominant. Today you see drones going and killing people. But those drones are driven by humans sitting somewhere. But in just a few years' time, you will have drones that do not require any human intervention. They have their own brains. They will go and kill people. Do you want that kind of technology where humans are no longer driving technologies, but technologies are driving humans? These are the kind of ethical questions that are going to spring up from this new technology era we are entering into. Do we have answers for it? Do we have any suggestions for it? These important questions can be answered by our Indic wisdom, because Indic wisdom has always kept man at the center. It is human-centric. Deen Dayal Upadhyay called it integral humanism. It is integral, the whole world as one unified entity, but it is human-centric, humanist. So the development should be human-centric. And lastly, friends, the new era of development, the new era we are entering is going to be more about rights and freedoms. Here you must remember that the basic first human urge is for freedom. Freedom, its definition can be many ways. It can be spiritual freedom, but also it can be physical, social freedom. Man, Aurobindo's very famous speech on 15th August 1947, which he gave in the form of an interview to Tiruchinappalli All India Radio. In that he says, the first and foremost urge of every human being is for freedom. Freedom from many things. He will ask for rights. Many kinds of rights debate is going to begin in the world. Rights of transgenders, rights of oppressed sections, rights of minorities, rights of homosexuals, these and many more, rights of animals, rights of dogs, rights of cats. This is all going to be the future debate. Can Dharma traditions manage this debate in the ethical and moral framework. So that this debate, which is not only relevant, but it is going to be eminent. You cannot escape. It is going to happen. Can you give proper guidance and direction to this debate also, so that this debate takes a meaningful shape? It is not enough to say that no rights, only duties. It's very easy to say, but every human being wants rights. Every human being wants freedoms. How do you present that dichotomy of freedoms on one side and responsibilities on the other side? Only the Eastern wisdom can answer these questions. Friends, this new agenda can best be addressed by the wisdom of our traditions, both the Dharma traditions of Hinduism, Sikhism, Jainism, etc., and also the Dhamma traditions of various strands of Buddhism. I only urge that it is time we turn our attention to this discourse. When we talk about Dhamma discourse, we need to turn our discourse to these new agenda items. How do we respond to these challenges? I am sure more and more discourse should happen on these issues, give more wisdom to the world, and also more and more literature should come out on these issues. I am happy to see occasionally books coming out on subjects like the human rights in Hinduism. Professor Arvind Sharma of Montreal, he authored one book. And I came across another book by Professor Subedi, Nepal scholar, eminent scholar from Nepal, again on the human rights debate in Eastern traditions. We need to now talk about these issues. So I urge the conference to also ponder over these issues besides the other issues we anyway every time talk about and take up. I thank you all for this opportunity. Namaskar.
Dhanyavad Ram Madoji on bringing new insight. I am going to include little more in the Dharma group and Dhamma group. See, our civilization of Southeast Asia, as we are talking about Hindu, Buddhist, Jain, Sikh, I don't use ism with them, Deliberately I don't use ism. Hindu, Buddhist, Sikh and Jain. All these people follow pluralism, truth, compassion. Other same type of two people are also in our civilization area, they follow the same thing, path, the way, belief. Same thing, pluralism, compassion, truth. They are Shinto and Tao. So when we are increasing our Dhamma group, we should also include them in the Shinto and Tao also in there. And these Dhamma group geographically were in the country like, Bharat, Tibet, Nepal, China, Mongolia, Korea, Japan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, Myanmar, Sri Lanka, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, Malaysia, and this was our homeland. We were interacting those days through our master, teachers, movement and their interaction, trade and commerce also. You can see the riches also and the monastery and temples all across this area. But how we got separated, Thousands of years we were interacting. How we got separated? When Islam came, attacked Bharat, they controlled Malacca Strait, and then we got separated. And then separation started. You can see Nalanda, the historical Nalanda is victim of the same onslaught. So that is the reality, And not only Islam, for the same time, even China was also controlled by them, by 𝐃𝐡𝐚𝐽 when they got converted to Islam. And Europe started coming out to Asia only for loot and plunder and genocide. So in this situation, during this period, only Japan was left. We were all humiliated, tortured, looted and plundered. So we lost our strength. Dharma group lost strength, I always go and talk, we have a great philosophy, we have everything, but we don't have a strength, they are not going to respect you, even in this modern time also. The reality is that we must gain a strength. When you have a strength, everybody will respect you. Either you have economic strength, military strength, technology strength, you need to have a strength. What is the internal challenge before the Dharma group in the present context? As Ram Madhav was mentioning, the modern economic things, we have many challenges. Our society, still large number of our society is the poor. We have to look after our poor. If we are not going to look after the poor, then again that is a big issue. We need to look after them, Our poor, less fortunate, our society should be well looked after. Second, our problem is, we were a society of sharing and caring, civilization of sharing and caring. But now, our society is turning into individualistic. That is again the big challenge before our Dharma group. That is not our real value system. We were pluralistic society based on family and community. Now we are, as I mentioned, individualistic. Once Lee Kuan Yew said, there was a time, 3-4 generations we were living under one roof. That is all breaking. Another big challenge before the Dharma group is the demography is changing in this Dharma civilization area. Demographic change. If you are not changing this demographic decline, then you are in a big mess. We can go on talking, but you are in a real mess. I can tell you, the world's largest Islamic country, biggest Islamic country in terms of population, is not in the West Asia and Gulf. It is the Dharma group, Indonesia, the largest country. The world's 60% Islamic population is all on the Dharma land. Remember, this is all on the Dharma land. And you have seen the impact of the conversion, how South Korea demography is changing, and many other places is changing, because of this conversion. So this is also a big challenge, and this is challenge is that even the Pope, 1999 in the Deepavali time in Bharat, what he declared, I am going to quote, just as in the first millennium, cross was planted on the soil of Europe, in the second on the America and Africa. We can pray that in the third Christian millennium, great harvest of faith will be reaped in this vast and vital continent of Asia. Unquote. This is the, this is how they are challenging the Dhamma group. And you will be surprised, 1901, when the statistics show in the Christian population in this Asia was only 10 million. Now they are more than 350 million. Now they are more than 350 million. I am not going to detail because we don't have time. These two civilizations, Christianity, Islam, they have destroyed many big civilization and empire like a Roman, Greek, Inca, Mayan, Aztec in South America. This is like Persian, Egyptian, Mesopotamian, Babylonian, Assyrian civilization empire, And their onslaught is not stopping, it's still continuing. So this is again, we all remember this. So this is not going to be easy for us. I am just telling you, when Taliban in Afghanistan destroying the great statue of Buddha in the Bamiyan in the name of Islam, what was our response? We were watching helplessly. And the recent defeat and withdrawal of the USN in Afghanistan is a stark reality. So what we should do, I am telling you, my personal experience. I was attending Millennium Peace Summit in 2000 United Nations, I met a foundation group. They were distributing their books and pamphlets. They told 3 faith foundation. I told, what do you mean by the 3 faith? No, we Christians, Muslims and Jews, we are people of the book. We are children of Abraham. Therefore, we have a 3 faith foundation. So we are trying to working together. Let's not fight. Let's work together. So it started wondering in my mind, these fellows from the very beginning are fighting each other, killing each other, destroying each other. But in spite of all this, they are trying to work together. But we never fought war in the name of our Dharma and philosophy in whole 1,000-2,000 years. But we are not working together on that line, So that is a challenge, how we all can work together in this current situation. All these groups can come together, And in that situation, we have opportunity. Ram Madhav was telling about climate change, This is going to discuss how all those thoughts is coming, from where this problem has started. You read Bible, Genesis 1.26, I am just quoting the original Bible, The problem, where is the problem? God said, let us make mankind in our own image, in our own likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the bird in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animal, and all over the creation. They move along the ground. And again, quoting 1.28, God blessed them and said to be beautiful, fruitful, and increase the number, fill the earth, subdue it. Ram Madhav is telling, Mata Bhumi Putram Prithiba is our thought. But here is rule over the world and subdue it. That is the thought process, Rule over the fish in the sea, the bird in the sky, and every living creature move on the ground. That is the thought process we have to confront. So, what is the opportunity? Opportunity is that economy, we have opportunity. In the field of all the Dharma group can come together, all the Dharma group can come together. We have a bigger, you can say, bigger economic bloc. We can say the axis of economic power is shifting Asia from Dharma follow. Among the Dharma followers should play a rightful role. So, this is also an area we need to work together. Second important part is that Dharma is a uniting force. Dharma is a uniting force. Dharma-based civilization alone can ensure a sparing use of natural resources with minimum impact on environment, ecology, leaving the earth in condition that we have inherited. Also coexist with mutual respect and harmonious living in the world. Dharma-based civilization are the opportunity to save the post-code world order. So, that is the opportunity for us. So, how we are going to do? In my historical analysis, in the short, answer line unity of Dharma. And this unity is not just abstract. We should have to develop a working mechanism in solid framework. And I am requesting again here, this is a historical place of Nalanda University. If sometime Nalanda University take initiative, we should invite all the scholars, leader, social leader from all these, from Japan to Bharat, all the Hindu, Buddhist, Shinto, Tao, all these groups. Let's discuss, deliberate, form some organization where develop our charter, working mechanism, and set up it. And after that, slowly we should develop a very strong dharmic, socio-cultural, economic bloc, and later a strategic and political bloc. If we are stronger, we will be able to protect Dharma, as Swamiji mentioned, Dharma Rakshti Rakshita. Dharma protects its protector. With this word, I end the session. Namaste. Yeah, 6 o'clock. Sorry.
Thank you, Swamiji. Thank you for chairing the session, and it's a wonderful session, keynote session. May I request Swami Vigyananand ji to felicitate Swamiji, Swami Sadhu Bhadresh Das ji. Now, may I request Major General Dhruv Khattu to felicitate Swamiji, Swami Vigyananand. Thank you. Sir, we are so may I request Swami Vigyananand ji, please kind of felicitate Sri Ram Madhav ji. I'll send. And now I may request Swami Sadhu Bhadresh to felicitate and give memento to Sri Swami Madhav and Swami Vigyananand ji. Thank you. We will have a first plenary session in few minutes, and please be seated. And we will have it in 2 minutes. The next session start soon. Please be seated. No, session is over for the first. Kindly please be seated in your respective chairs. The session will start soon in 2 minutes. kindly be seated, and then we'll start the session now, the first plenary session. So, yeah. For the first plenary session, may I request Professor Sri Prakash Singh Ji to come on to the dais, and and Swami Hari Prasad Ji come on to the dais for the first plenary session. I request Professor Sri Prakash Singh Ji to chair and conduct the session. Yeah, thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, good evening, you all. It's the first plenary session of this wonderful seminar. And what an opportunity created by Nalanda University and India Foundation. Manan karot it manushya. We have been victim of this COVID pandemic. We have been suffering, humanity is suffering, and today we are discussing what may be the new world order. Ram Madhav, while speaking, gave a new insight how post-COVID new world order is different to new world order of Second World War, post-Second World War. And this discourse becomes important for us, for humanity, because of our dharmic traditions. When we look at the COVID management all over the world, we can find there are some references of statesmanship in our own literature. For example, in Arthashastra, in 𝐃𝐡𝐚𝐽, Kautilya rightly reminds us that happiness of the subject lies in the happiness of the king, and what is beneficial to the subject, that is beneficial to the king and humanity. When we look at the traditions associated with Dharma, and when I am referring Dharma, again I am emphasizing it's not religion, it's not worship methods, it's a way of life. And to elaborate it, we can say that Rashtra Dharma, Raj Dharma, Apad Dharma, Samaj Dharma, and Dharma associated with the individuals. In discourse of our deliberation in this session, we have 4 speakers today. 3 speakers will join us online, and at the last, Swamiji will address. All speakers will have 10 minutes each, and I'll request all speakers to maintain the time, because maintaining the time is also a dharma. And with this request, I'm requesting Professor Antonino Raffone to address us on this very issue, and he is Professor of Psychology in Sapienza University, Rome, Italy. His area of interest is study of Buddhist mindfulness and its clinical experiences. I'm requesting Professor Antonino Raffone to speak. Professor Antonino.
Be speaker at this wonderful Dharma Dhamma conference at Nalanda University. So I'm honored, delighted of this possibility to deliver my talk in this plenary session here, and I'm sorry not being able on this occasion to be present physically due to these still pandemic complications, restrictions. So I'm happy to share some slides with you as related to my talk. So I would be grateful if I could share my screen. That would, I think, help the delivery of my talk. Thank you. Many thanks. So, the topic of my talk is on the management of post-COVID mental health and behavioral change for a sustainable future based on the dharmic development of awareness and compassion. So I like, as I did actually, when I had the honor, the great pleasure to be visiting professor at Nalanda University School of Buddhist Studies. Wonderful experience of also conversation with the students. I liked to start with this passage from the known physicist Albert Einstein. And I'm going to read it. A human being is part of a whole called by us the universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest us. our task, our mission must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circles of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature and its beauty. So I think it's a very universal message, I would say, which links beautifully to Dharma, Dhamma, values. And for example, in Dharma, Hindu Dharma, Buddhist Dharma, among others, I like also this quote from the Buddha: as the sea is pervaded by one taste, namely that of salt, in the same way my teaching is pervaded by one idea, that of freedom. So the topic of liberation actually from the prison of our restricted views and habits. So wonderful wisdom from the East, and nicely resonating also with Western contemplative perspective. And what a wonderful contribution in the history from Nalanda University for the elaboration and transmission of core teachings about the mind and its liberation. And so I cannot not mention now the wonderful contemporary developments at Nalanda University, Rajgir, for really so many important topics for humanity. So, in Dharma, Buddhist Dharma, but this really resonates with Hindu Dharma and universal spiritual, contemplative values. It is said that we have in our mind some afflictions, some obscurations, we could say. Classically, these are called the three poisons of the mind: greed, hatred, and delusion. So, in a sense, nowadays we are also in science try to understand more. Our mind and our brain are affected by these afflictions, by these, we say, as in Abhidharma, for example, text in the ancient Buddhist psychology, by the way, elaborated in Nalanda University, is really unwholesome, unhealthy habits and mind states that we have to work with them through the meditation, through a ethical life, through wisdom, to be more free for the benefit of ourselves, others, and the world. And just to give an idea about how refined these models are, I would say, from coming from these ancient treatises about the mind. This comes actually from the Abhidharma, the Buddhist model of the mind, and specifically the so-called 8 consciousness. So when I was teaching in Nalanda University, I remember beautiful interactions with the students there. They said, oh, but also in other schools of thought, in Indian philosophy, there are models like this. And it was very interesting to learn also about these ancient, beautiful insights about the consciousness and the human from India. And now in the West, East world, global science is worldwide, I think, endeavor, and with outstanding contributions also from Eastern countries. We try to understand more also why, when the mind works in a balanced, emotionally balanced way, healthy way, we have a balance between our motivational systems. For example, the desire, the drive system with the dopamine. We are in balance with our fears, with our anxiety. So, and also very important, you can see here, this is called the soothing system, caring system. We have in our mind, in our brain, body, a system that is very important for caring. Caring about ourselves, caring about others, caring with compassion about the world. And the meditation practices, the contemplative practices, as where they were beautifully developed in the East, and now they are increasingly...
Recording in progress.
They are increasingly also applied in the West, like mindfulness. It's called the secular development of mindfulness, compassion, emotional balance. So very important to keep our emotional balance to stay well with ourselves, with others, and with the world. So given this context, I have had also the fortune to be involved in international projects. One of these is about mental balance initiative led by Lama Dr. Alan Wallace and collaborators, building bridges between Buddhism and Western psychology. Very important for implications for mental health and happiness. So this very important issue in positive psychology about developing happiness. And of course, we need to care also about the stress that we have in everyday life. And I was involved with collaborators at Sapienza University of Rome in a trial for reducing stress, anxiety in healthcare workers, and we integrated yoga and mindfulness. It was a successful attempt. So we are now planning to explore the possibility to extend this initiative to the benefit of healthcare workers through Italy. And so, another important timely issue for everyone in the world is the climate change. So it's a very delicate issue, and through an international panel on behavior change, I have had this fortune to be involved in this international organization that has the mission actually to work on the human factor for a sustainable future, for prevention of climate change. So with just as there is the famous IPCC that is involved with the scientists for the climate change issue from a scientific point, studying the natural causes and factors. And by the way, there is I'm aware of the also wonderful developments, academic developments at Nalanda University about these issues of ecological issues. And so IPCC deals with the human factor of behavior. So just to quote some reflections, like the biggest obstacle to dealing with climate disruptions lies between your ears. And another reflection, I used to think the top environmental problems were biodiversity, loss, ecosystem collapse, and climate change. I thought that with the 30 years of good science, but I was wrong. The top environmental problems are selfishness, greed, and apathy. Remember, the three poisons, greed, one of them. And to deal with those, we need the spiritual and cultural transformation. And we scientists don't know how to do that. So we can learn a lot also from Dharma wisdom. And by the way, just to give you an idea about the geographical distribution of signatures of the IPCC manifesto, you are very welcome to join this international initiative. And basically, there is the idea, in order to optimize the scientific and societal relevance of IPCC productions, there is we have launched these 3 working groups: scientists, economic actors, and other stakeholders and institutions. And of course, now there is also a trend very important about mindfulness, applying these developments based on meditation practices to not only for well-being and health, but also for ecological issues. So they say mindfully green and healthy. And now turning into the issue of the pandemic that has really had a major impact in our world for health, of course, physical health, economy, we know, but also mental health. It seems to be really a major impact on mental health, especially on more vulnerable populations. This is not only, unfortunately, during the pandemic period or lockdown and so on, but there are some predictions that the scenario of mental health in the world can get worse over the next years due to the pandemic. So, for example, this is a review in the prestigious medical journal Lancet, the psychological impact of quarantine and how to reduce it. So, the studies reported the psychological effects, including post-traumatic stress symptoms, confusion. People just got more confused, anger, and also other factors. And this resonates also with reviews from other parts of the world, for example, from the Asian Journal of Psychiatry, and evidence of increase of anxiety, depression, self-reported stress, and disturbed sleep as well. So, very important then to have resources, also inner resources, that may also relate to Dharma, Dhamma, and this is a study showing the factors of resilience when there is the pandemic, psychological factors. They include self-efficacy, personal wisdom, gratitude of being, gratitude toward the world, inner well-being by optimism, gratitude of being, and acceptance. I would say these are all dharmic related virtues and values that we have to find a way to, in some way, enhance in our world through appropriate contemplative practices. And also, we have done study in Italy as well. Coincidentally, we were running some interventions based on mindfulness-based stress reduction when the first lockdown, unfortunately, happened in Italy. It was in early March 2020. Really, Italy was at the major effect and at that time, we could see that with this trial, that it was a female sample. They had benefits to the mindfulness practice, this 8-week program that was delivered online because everyone was locked down in home. And still, we could see benefits like improvements in self-acceptance, purpose in life, relations to others, but then also increasing psychological flexibility and higher levels of psychological well-being. So I think we can really learn deeply from universal Dhamma, Dharma, and from these constructive bridges between East and West, Eastern and Western traditions. And once again, thank you for inviting me, and warm greetings to the colleagues at Nalanda University and students.
Thank you, Professor. Now I invite our another speaker, Lavanya Vemsani. She is professor at Shawnee State University, Ohio. Her specialization is modern Hinduism text and context. Lavanya ji, floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to deliver a lecture. It's my honor to be here. My topic focuses on Dhamma, Dharma, and Mahabharata traditions, examination of Balarama in Hindu and Jain texts. This presentation focuses on Balarama in Dharma traditions, Dharma expressed in the stories of Balarama, and conclusion, what it shows us about the shared traditions of the Dharma traditions. 2 to 3 millennia ago, ancient Dharma traditions of India, Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism, shared classical traditions including the Mahabharata, Ramayana, and the Dharma tradition. Similarly, Sikhism, the early modern religion of India, also shares the classical traditions as well as the Dharma. Balarama is one of the important divinities in the Mahabharata and the Harivamsa, the Kila of the Mahabharata. Balarama's story appears in the Mahabharata and Harivamsa in detail. Balarama's story also appears in detail in Jain texts. Vasudeva Hindi, Harivamsha Purana, Vishasti Shalaka Purushacharyam, Chaupanna Mahapurushacharyam, most important text of Balarama's story. For this presentation, I will focus on the birth stories of Balarama from Hindu and Jain texts for analysis. There are two stories of Balarama's birth in the Mahabharata and Harivamsa. The first story indicates the origin of Balarama and Krishna from Narayana. God Narayana removed two hairs from his head which incarnated on the earth as Krishna and Balarama. The white hair was Balarama and the dark hair was Krishna. It indicates the origin of Balarama and Krishna directly from Narayana. In the second version of the birth story of Balarama, that is found in the Harivamsa, during the 7th month of pregnancy, the embryo was transferred from Devaki to Rohini. Rohini gave birth to the child Balarama at the end of the term of her pregnancy. The two stories are simple and clearly indicate the incarnation of Balarama from Vishnu Narayana. Similar stories are also found in Jain traditions. The most important feature of the Jain stories is the superior status accorded to Balarama over Krishna. The Vasudeva Hindi mentions that Balarama was born with a Srivatsa mark on his chest. The Srivatsa is a characteristic mark of Vishnu. It is an auspicious mark connected with also Tirthankaras. Srivatsa is one of the 8 auspicious signs of the dinners. The attribution of this mark to Balarama in the Vasudeva Hindi may indicate a connection of Balarama to the Tirthankaras in the Jain text as an early phase of development and his superior position. Jain specific data added on to the core stories of Balarama. This is paralleled by the first version of the birth story of Balarama in the Mahabharata, where Balarama originates directly from Vishnu, although his position continued to decline in the later Hindu text. It is also significant that Balarama's identity and status are maintained uniformly in all Jain texts studied in this chapter. In direct contrast to this, declining identity and status of Balarama is noticed in Hindu Purana. The Jain sources continue to depict him in a significant status by including him in the series of Baladevas that are born from time to time in equal status, if not more significant status than Krishna. The most important narrative difference in this story is the inclusion of Rohini's dream sequence. Inclusion of the dreams in his birth stories is an indication that the Jains have incorporated a special category of important individuals to incorporate Balarama into Jainism. The mothers of all the Shalaka Purushas, distinguished men, are said to see certain number of dreams. The birth story of Balarama is therefore set to the pattern of the birth stories of Shalaka Purushas in Jainism. The Vasudeva Hindi, the Harivamsha Purana, and the Trishasti Shalaka Purusha Charita mention the same list of dreams, while the Chaupanna Mahapurusha Charyam story is too brief to mention any of the dreams. Antakata Dasharao mentions a list of 14 dreams that are seen by the mother of a Chakravarti from among a total of 32 dreams. From among the list of these, Vasudeva's mother sees 7 dreams, while the mother of Baladeva sees 4 dreams. So the starting of the story in the Mahabharata is direct incarnation, and same tradition is followed in the Jainism also. Another distinctive feature of the Jain birth story of Balarama is that it marks it as different from the Hindu stories is the absence of embryonic transfer from Devaki to Rohini, the most important feature of Balarama's stories in Hindu texts. This suggests that the Jain story of the birth of Balarama is independent of the Hindu Purana story and perhaps of the Vasudeva story itself. Given that one function of the transfer of Hindu stories was to bring Balarama and Krishna stories together, is the absence of embryonic transfer also removes the involvement of the goddesses in the Balarama story. This might reflect a lesser role of the goddesses in Jainism, but this is difficult to assess given the variety of reactions noted in the medieval Jain times. The source of the Jain story may not be an earlier story, but the frame story that remains as one of the original stories represented in the Mahabharata. While important details of Hindu story are dropped, even though some scholars argue for the existence of an independent source period. Internal textual evidence of Balarama story does not support independent origin of Jain story, but merely alteration of the Hindu. I think the absence of embryonic transfer serves as evidence of an earlier origin of this birth story, similar to the Mahabharata version, which can be deduced from the special attributes mentioned in this birth story in the Vasudeva hymn discussed above. It is devoid of goddess transfer and indicates direct origins from Vishnu, seems to have served as a source for Jain rather than later texts. It shows that early stories are shared between the Dharma's traditions since the beginning some 3 millennia ago. Even though all the Dharma traditions evolved distinctly, they shared the traditional literature as well as mutual coexistence of the Dharma throughout their long history. Analysis of the Jain birth story of Balarama indicates Balarama's identity as one of the Baladevas and therefore secures his significant position within Jainism. The Jain birth story is clearly distinct from the Hindu Purana accounts finally associated with Mahabharata story. It connects Balarama with Tirthankara and Vishnu in its earliest version, but not with the goddesses. At the same time, it represents a distinctive story tradition, that of Vasudeva Baladeva cycle of stories, in which Balarama was sufficiently important to merit an account of his parents' marriage and birth that was set in a fixed form relatively early. I decided to examine the stories of Balarama from Hindu and Jain texts to understand the shared traditions of Dharma religion. This shows the shared Dharma and Dharma traditions between Jainism and Hinduism, as well as Buddhism and Sikhism. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Professor Lavanya. Now I am inviting our third online speaker, Professor Jeffrey Long. Professor Jeffrey Long is Professor of Religion and Asian Studies at Elizabethtown College, Pennsylvania, USA. Professor Jeffrey Long.
Namaste, and thank you so much for your kind invitation. I hope I'm audible clearly to everyone. And so if I could also share my screen, I do have a little bit of a presentation I've put together. So hopefully that is visible now to everyone. So very good. So I am very honored to be here. I'm grateful for the invitation from the organizers, from Professor Sunena Singh in particular. Thank you so much for your kind invitation. And I was initially invited to be there in person, and I wish I could have. But like Professor Rafoni, it's been difficult for me to be able to travel right now. But I'm very grateful to be here. My presentation really connects with both of the previous ones, Professor Rafoni and my good friend Lavanya Vinsani, who've just spoken, looking at how the wisdom of the Dharma traditions is tremendously relevant, urgently relevant to the development of a post-COVID world, or at least post-pandemic world. And also connects with Professor Vinsani's presentation because I'm drawing from more than one of the Dharma traditions and really drawing on some of their shared insights rather than looking at one specific tradition. Though I am beginning with Buddhism. And one of the things that has been very striking to me is the fact that we have this term Sanatana Dharma that is often used to describe specifically the Vedic traditions, Hindu traditions, but it also has the connotation of something that is universal and eternal, and not specific to only one geography or one space. And one of the earliest usages of this term is actually in a Buddhist text. And I think this speaks to a deeper unity behind these traditions, a unity of concepts. So my presentation is in Pali, 𝐂𝐨𝐧𝐼𝐻 Sanantano, that is, this is Sanatana Dharma. So we have this urgent need, as Professor Rafani said in his presentation, to draw upon spiritual wisdom. Right? There are a great number of practical questions, questions of public policy, questions of health, scientific questions. These are all very relevant. These are all essential. But without the deeper wisdom, the values to guide our decision making, we could just fall into one disaster after another. And it's my view that the COVID crisis has been something of the nature of a warning that the course humanity has been taking for some time has not been a very wise one. Our technology, our intellectual knowledge has outpaced, I think in many cases, the wisdom that informs our decisions. So the Dharma traditions, of course, are a very rich source for wisdom. And in the search for wisdom from the Dharma or Dhamma traditions to help humanity build a post-COVID world order, a particularly valuable resource is the teaching of the Buddha, as found in one of the most ancient texts of the Buddhist tradition, reflecting, we think, the words of the Buddha himself. This text is the Dhammapada, the verses on Dhamma. In the 5th verse of the 1st chapter of this text, one of the earliest usages of the term Sanatana Dharma, or more accurately in Pali, Dhammo Sanantano, can be found. This verse is a profoundly instructive one for humanity, particularly in our contemporary era as we look forward to a post-COVID world order. This verse from the Dhammapada reads as follows: Ta nahi verena verani samantitha kudachanam averena cha samanti esa dhammo sanantano. This verse can be rendered in English as, hatred can never be overcome by hatred in this world. Only by love can hatred be overcome. This is Sanatana Dharma, the eternal true order of things. These words, attributed to the Lord Buddha himself, provide us with an important clue as to how the Dharma or Dhamma traditions can contribute to the building of a post-COVID world order. The COVID crisis can be seen as a warning that the materialistic pursuits of humanity, if left unchecked, are guaranteed to lead us to disaster. This is a basic truth which all the Dharma traditions have long taught. A sustainable world order can only be built on love. That is, on the Dharmic understanding of the radical unity and interdependence of all living beings. And I really enjoyed the Einstein quote that Professor Raffoni put up, showing that this really is a universal insight, that our sense of separation is really a kind of optical illusion of our consciousness. Only by seeing the divinity which resides in all beings, as taught in the 30th verse of the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita, will we human beings be able to play our proper dharmic role in the cosmic project of Loka Sangraha, the stewardship and upholding of the world. I hope to present here a brief overview of key concepts from the Dharma and Dhamma traditions that can aid in the process of global sustenance. Why does the Lord Buddha say that only by love can hatred be overcome? What this verse is telling us is that love is the most powerful force in the universe. This is an important message in a world beset by hatred. The root of hatred, the Dharma traditions tell us, is of course fear. Living beings are not by our nature hateful. We learn to hate when we are hurt. That is, when we find ourselves attacked and victimized. Acts of hatred and victimization are themselves rooted in prior experiences of being victimized by others. That is, those who victimize us were themselves victimized at some point, and this poison has been passed on from one person to the next. There are also hateful ideologies which instill in us fear of being victimized, even when no such danger is actually present. And I'm thinking of Professor Raffoni's presentation about the three sort of reactions we have in our brain, and the fear reaction, the anxiety and threat reaction can be induced by an actual physical threat, but it can also be induced just by our own thought process. We are taught to fear the other and to be wary. To be sure, we live in a world in which not all beings are enlightened. Indeed, we live in a world shot through with ignorance and desire, leading some beings to resort to violence, and requiring violence in return in order to prevent the forces of chaos from destroying the conditions that make peaceful life possible. This was observed, of course, by Sri Aurobindo, who said, "War and destruction are not only a universal principle of our life here in its purely material aspects, but also of our mental and moral existence. It is impossible, at least as men and things are, to advance, to grow, to fulfill, and still to observe really and utterly that principle of harmlessness, ahimsa, which is yet placed before us as the highest and best law of conduct." And of course, we have this ancient teaching, ahimsa paramo dharma, which is found, I believe, 4 times in the Mahabharata and in various other sources as well. While this is true of the world we currently inhabit, the Dharma or Dhamma traditions also teach us unanimously that this world, at least in its current state, is not our final destination. This realm of samsara is preparatory to the realm of nirvana. This world in its current state is the famous dangerous snake, which upon closer inspection proves in reality to be a harmless piece of rope. The world which we now experience as full of suffering, violence, hatred, and fear is in reality a realm of bliss and joy, if we are able to perceive it as it truly is, removing our delusions, not through the veil of avidya, of primordial ignorance. In reality, in the words of Nagarjuna, the limit of samsara is no different from the limit of nirvana. And in the words of Swami Vivekananda, this world is perfect. Hatred finally cannot be overcome by hatred, because hatred does not in fact reflect the true nature of reality. Hatred is rooted in primordial ignorance, from the false sense of I and mine, and of difference between the perceived self and other. The reality to which the Dharma and Dhamma traditions all point is of oneness and radical interdependence. It is this oneness which love reflects, and thus makes love the most powerful force in the universe. In the words of Pravajaka Vajrapana, unity is the song of life. It is the grand theme underlying the rich variations that exist throughout the cosmos. Whatever we see, whatever we experience, is only a manifestation of this eternal oneness. The divinity at the core of our being is the same divinity that illumines the sun, the moon, and the stars. There is no place where we, infinite in nature, do not exist. If we are all one, we each owe to all other beings the same love and respect that we would wish to be shown to ourselves. Non-duality, a core principle of the Dharma and Dhamma traditions, gives a metaphysical basis for the famous golden rule that is affirmed in all the major world religions, that we should treat others as we ourselves wish to be treated. To again cite Vajrapana, love your neighbor as yourself, because your neighbor is yourself. As she further elaborates, love, sympathy, and empathy are the affirmation of this truth. They are a reflexive response because they mirror the reality of the universe. When we feel love and sympathy, we are verifying, albeit unconsciously, the oneness that already exists. When we feel hatred, anger, and jealousy, we separate ourselves from others and deny our real nature, which is infinite and free from limitations. Ahimsa, nonviolence in thought, word, and action, clearly follows from this principle of the unity of existence. In the words of Swami Vivekananda, do not injure another. Love everyone as your own self, because the whole universe is one. In injuring another, I am injuring myself. In loving another, I am loving myself. If we strive to see the divinity in all beings, this will lead us to love them, to wish only for their well-being. In the words of Lord Krishna, again, I am never lost to one who sees me everywhere, and who sees all beings in me, and such a one is never lost to me. Indeed, the perception of the divine presence in all beings is the basis of the simple greeting, Namaste. I revere the divinity within you. A post-COVID world order, if it is to be truly sustainable, must operate in harmony with the deepest principles that underlie our existence. The disharmony of our current way of living and thinking with these principles has given rise to dis-ease, which of course I'm breaking down the word disease here, but we have dis-ease on every level, from international conflict to conflict between communities, within families, between individuals, and of course between human beings and our larger non-human environment. And of course there is the disease of COVID itself. The Dharma and Dhamma traditions draw our attention to these deepest principles and provide us with a perfect guide to their realization. We ignore them at our own peril and at the peril of all life on earth. Thank you very much, and I'm grateful again for the opportunity to present.
Thank you, Professor. Now, I'll request for a special address, Swami Hari Prasad Ji, Managing Trustee, Sri Vishnu Mohan Foundation, India. Swami Hari Prasad Ji.
Narayana, Narayana, Narayana. So my talk is immediately after Professor Long, and I'm also speaking mainly about how the 6th chapter is invaluable in the, very useful, it's invaluable in handling the situation that we face today in the post-COVID world. We assume that it's a post-COVID world, because COVID has come, gone, come again. So we have to have an open mind as to what is going to be happening in the future. But for that to be able to live in a post-COVID world, we have had 2 years of trauma, which people were not able to meet other people were not able to. We are descended from apes, so therefore we are extremely gregarious. We need to talk with people, we need to hear people. By the grace of God, this happened. Sri Bhagavan was good enough, he allowed it to happen in the internet age. So we could buy food, we could talk with other people, but there was a great deal of a sense of loss in this. People were feeling lost, people were feeling fearful, because all of us live. The Greek philosopher Epicurus said, against all else we can provide ourselves security, but with regards to death we live in an unfortified city. We live in an unfortified city. But that came, really it stared us in the face during the COVID time. During the COVID time, anybody could be sick, and then you go into a...
It's 7 o'clock.
We go into a room which is just whitewashed walls, and we don't see anybody. We just see figures in white coming and treating us and going. And that was very difficult. That was actually the most difficult part for the patients who were there inside. So I was able to, with the grace of my Guru, start e-satsangs over the telephone, over Zoom and all these things. We were able to have satsangs, so the older people did not feel lost. So the older people, younger people at least were familiar with the communication, with all these things, and they had jobs. They could work from home, but the older people had nothing to hold on to. So this is satsang through telephones, through or Zoom and all these things were able to give them a hold in life. And they said, we feel so rejuvenated after chanting. This name of God is something which all religions have, but is given a lot of emphasis in India because it has aspects of Shakti, power. It has the aspects of Bhakti. We are able to connect to Bhagavan, and we are also able to free ourselves from the situations we live in, to have detachment, and that gives us jnana. So all these things comes with chanting. Normally we just say that what is he just sitting and saying all these names of God, what is it going to help him? It's not, it does help. It helps in so many ways. So in this, we must see how that 6th chapter he says, Bhagavan says, Professor Long, you also quoted that about, that it's on the basis of seeing that the Atma lives everywhere, that when we know that and we act on that basis, then we are the best yogis. But then Bhagavan is moving us, as all teachers of religion have, moving us from, we tend to look at the letter, because the tattva is so great, so important that it does not fill our mind. I mean, or rather, it does not, we are not able to comprehend it because our minds are limited, our minds are finite, and he is Ananta, infinite. So, but when we take this, that we are part of other people, we are not part of a group, but we are that group, then it becomes easier for us to deal with that. And Bhagavan is very, very compassionate and understanding of us. And he says, even a little bit of this Dharma helps you immensely, he says. And we can see that also in our lives. When we do the little bit of it, we can see a transformation happening. And he says also how we can do it. So when we live in this world, we have to live with the possibility of death, with the possibility of unhappiness, with the possibility of separation from loved ones, with the possibility of unemployment, with the possibility of loss of money. All these things are there. We have to live with it. We have to do two things. One is acceptance that this is possible, it can happen to me. The others, how will I deal with it? So we have to deal with it with detachment. We have to deal with it with thought of how our reactions to the world must be based on Dharma. Dharayati iti Dharma, because it supports us, it is Dharma. What is that? That is the knowledge that there is an other which is separated by us, from us, just in appearance, but they are actually us. Whether one is an Advaitin and says, Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma, or whether one is a dualist, Dvaitin, and say that Vasudeva Sarvamiti, the same thing is there, that God is everywhere and we are. If He is everywhere, He is in us. So when we do that, our dealings with the other people in the world become more considered, less impulsive, and less hurtful. It's not possible to be entirely without hurting, even though that is the basis of all the Arya Dharmas. Krishna himself says, Dandanyasa Paramadhanam. The best thing you can do for somebody else is not to hurt them. He says the best thing you can do for other people, not hurt them. He says, not giving them anything, but don't hurt them. That's all. So this is something which we can, as we bring ourselves, we have to take a control of ourselves. He said, the advice which he gives on controlling of the mind, that is absolutely relevant for us when we want to control our ways, our habits, our reactions, our impulses, and move ourselves onto that dharmic path. So he says, Vairagya and Abhyasa. When we want to do things which are not the best thing which we should be doing, sometimes it may be selfishness, sometimes it may not be selfishness, sometimes it could be himsick, hurting another person, but if we just have the Vairagya and see that we don't need to do these things. We don't need to hurt another person to grow. We don't have to climb on his head. There are other ways also in which we can grow. When we think of that, it's difficult, but we have thought of it, so therefore a step has been made. Then we have to do that abhyasa again. So just like how he says in the controlling the mind, same thing in the practices of the practice of Dharma, that is the only thing which can really help us. So Sri Krishna Arpanamastu, Sri Sadguru Arpanamastu. I have finished in 10 minutes.
Earlier, finishing in time is also a dharma of seminar, and Swamiji was well in time. Thank you, panelists. Now, few minutes are left for me, and I will be brief. And but one thing I must compliment Swamiji in his lecture. He used word Bhagwan, and this abbreviation of Bhagwan is a example explanation of nature. For example, Bha, Bhumi, Ga, Gagan, Va, Vayu, Na, Neer. All four elements in it. And in our literature, Chit Jal Pavak Gagan Samira Panch Tattva Rachit Adham Sarira. And when Tulsidas is describing this individual as Adham, there is a thought process. There is a concern of Dharma and Adharma. If you describe this individual, evaluate this individual as Adham, then we will find the answer what is Dharma and what is Adharma. And when Ram Madhavji was speaking about Gandhiji, when I go and discourse with Gandhi in thought process, then a word comes to my mind, that is Swaraj. Governing to the self, restraining to the self, controlling to the wants. And if we can develop this habit in ourselves, this journey of Swa, Ko-Aham, transform into Ko-Vayam, and the society's welfare is addressed. And this thought process is not a new thought process for us. And in our literature, we find numerous examples. Sarve bhavantu sukhina, sarve santu niramaya. And in Dhamma tradition, we find the concept of dukkha nirodha. Dukkha nirodha gamini pratipada, a concept similar to this Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina Sarve Santu Niramaya. Another, if we could develop this in our society, in our thought process, अष्टादश पुराणेषु व्यासस्य वचनद्वयम् परोपकाराय पुण्याय पापाय परपीडनम्. Look at this calamity. Look at this pandemic. With first lockdown to second phase, the kind of happenings, miseries we were facing, people were dying and people were on roads to help them. Scores of people, scores of religious institutions, and primarily Swamiji, religious institutions were at the forefront in serving the people. Ashtadas Puranis Vyasas Vachanadayam Paropkaraya Punyaya Papaya Parapidhanam. This thought process have been with us since ages. And when I was referring about what Dharma is, friends, start using this terminology. And it's not me. Max Muller in his last book, What India Can Teach Us, perhaps it's page 21. And Max Muller tells us, if Indians starts using their own terminologies, majority of their societal concerns will be addressed. And that reference is for Dharma, not for religion. And when I'm referring about Max Muller, my thought process goes with Manu Smriti, as Swamiji was referring about Dharma Yati Dharet. In Mahabharata itself, Lavanya was speaking about certain aspects of the Mahabharata, and I'll refer Lavanyaji one book written by Annie Besant on Mahabharata. It's published by Theosophical Society. It's beautifully written by Annie Besant, and its introduction itself for how what a researcher's dharma is. Whosoever is reading Mahabharata, what is expected from him. Anyway, Dhriti Chama Damoste Sochmid Nidgraha Dhi Vidya Satyam Krodho Daskam Dharma Lakshanam. And in the Mahabharata, there are tens of definitions of dharma, and none of them are associated with worship methods. It's only the virtuous, judicious behavior to the society. If we go on having all these literatures and faith in it, then our society will be transformed. Another one, Atmana Pratikulani Parisam na Samacharet. यदि हम इज्जत चाहते हैं, सम्मान चाहते हैं, तो हमारे शास्त्र कहते हैं कि हम भी वही देना शुरू करें. आत्म न प्रतिकूलानी, जो मेरे प्रतिकूल है वैसा आचरण न करें. If we want that society must come to my help, my rescue, then it's our duty to start helping others, thinking about others, listening and caring about others. We have been discussing about our dharma and Dhammapada. Dharma translated into Pali becomes Dhamma. Here, the welfare of everyone in form of Dukha Nivarana. And if we try to follow these practices in our society, we can assume that a wonderful society and the kind of society we had earlier, that society will be a reality again. With these words, I would like to thank Sri Ram Madhav for giving me this opportunity, and Professor Sunaina Singh ji giving me this wonderful opportunity to chair this session. I conclude this session with all responsibility and humility. I thank all my panelists, Professor Long, Professor Lavanya, Professor Rafne, and Swamiji for being a wonderful panelist. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Sri Prakash Singh ji, Swamiji, and online speakers for another great session. Now may I request Professor Sri Prakash Singh ji to felicitate Swami Hari Prasad ji. May I request Srimati Lalita Kumaramanglam ji to felicitate Professor Sri Prakash Singh ji. Yes. Sure. Yeah. Tomorrow. So the second plenary session starts at 9:30, so please we assemble at the auditorium at 9:15, and the dinner is actually served across the auditorium, where we'll have our open dinner over there. Please, thank you.